Have you ever noticed that in any room, the person with the real gravity, the real influence, they're rarely the loudest one? It's funny, right? While some people fill the air with noise just to prove they matter, true power, it operates on a totally different frequency. It doesn't need to shout. It plays by a different set of rules. So let's break those rules down.
Today, we're diving into one of the most misunderstood, and honestly, one of the most potent tools of influence: the strategic power of silence. We're going to explore why, in a world that is completely obsessed with being heard, the greatest advantage often goes to the person who has mastered the art of saying nothing at all.
So here's our game plan. We'll kick things off with a modern archetype that really embodies this whole idea. Then, we'll unpack the core principle that gives it so much power. From there, we'll see how it's used in, get this, high-stakes FBI negotiations. We'll look at the neuroscience that makes it all tick. And finally, we'll draw a super important line between using silence strategically and using it to hurt someone.
Okay, so let's start with a character you've probably seen floating around online, the so-called lone wolf, or as some people call it, the Sigma male. Now, whether you buy into the label or not, this whole archetype is built around a central pillar of quiet, observant power.
So what is this archetype really? Well, our sources define the Sigma as someone who intentionally steps off the typical social ladder. They're not chasing likes, they're not chasing approval, that quick little dopamine hit of validation we're all trained to want. No, their focus is internal. It's all about self-awareness, self-reliance, and living by their own rules. And just look at these core traits. They'd rather watch from the sidelines than be the center of attention. And they can't stand small talk. Now, this isn't just about being an introvert. It's a form of what you could call stimulus control. In a world practically engineered to hijack your attention, cutting out cheap inputs, like pointless chatter, is a way to protect your focus. By listening more than they speak, they're not being passive at all. They're actively gathering information. And that projects a kind of confidence that doesn't need a loudspeaker. You just feel it.
But that quiet confidence isn't just a personality quirk, right? It's actually the result of a really powerful strategic principle. And this brings us to the core mechanic behind silent power, what we can call the law of the void.
This whole idea was famously spelled out by author Robert Greene in his massively influential and, pretty controversial book, The 48 Laws of Power. He actually dedicated an entire law to the strategic value of just keeping your mouth shut. Law number 4. It's simple, it's direct, and man, is it potent. Always say less than necessary. The core idea here is that the tongue is a beast that very few people can actually master. And the ones who do? They gain an immediate and an immense advantage. According to Greene, the contrast is just stark. When you talk too much, you seem ordinary. You end up revealing your plans, your weaknesses, and you almost always inevitably say something foolish. It just screams a lack of self-control. But when you say very little, you create a void. And people, well, they rush to fill that void. They project their own ideas of intelligence and power onto you, they get uncomfortable, and they start talking, revealing their own thoughts, their own insecurities. Your silence literally makes them do all the work, and it makes every single word you do decide to say land with incredible weight. Now look, this isn't just some abstract philosophy. This principle becomes a lethal weapon when the stakes are literally life and death, and we see this play out in the world of FBI hostage negotiations. Former lead FBI negotiator Chris Voss, he developed this system he calls tactical empathy. Now, forget everything you think you know about negotiation. No fist pounding, no aggressive demands. Voss's method is all about deliberately understanding the other person's perspective so well that you can subtly start to influence their decisions. It's about disarming them, not dominating them. The tools themselves look almost too simple, but they are devastatingly effective. It all starts with active listening, just gathering information. Then you use techniques like mirroring, which is literally just repeating the last few words they said, or labeling, saying something like, "It sounds like you're really frustrated." But the final critical step is dynamic silence. After you use a label or a mirror, you shut up, you pause, you let that silence do the heavy lifting, creating that same void that compels them to keep talking, to elaborate, to maybe even give something up.
So here's the bottom line. The whole goal, the holy grail of this entire process, is to get the other person to say 2 simple words. That's right. That phrase is the golden ticket. It means they feel so completely heard and understood by you that all their defensive walls just start to crumble. And more often than not, it's the strategic use of silence that gets them there.
But why is this so powerful? I mean, why does our brain react this way to a simple pause in conversation? Well, the answer lies deep in our neurobiology. It's all about what's going on inside our heads.
So, when someone uses strategic silence, especially in a tense conversation, it doesn't just create an awkward moment. No, it actually triggers a very specific cognitive state in the other person's mind.
It creates a state that neuroscientists call emotional ambiguity. See, our brains are basically prediction machines. They absolutely hate uncertainty. So when we can't read someone's intentions, our brain goes on high alert to try and solve the puzzle.
So here's the play-by-play of what's happening inside their brain. First, that silence triggers the amygdala. That's the brain's alarm system, and it creates this little jolt of unease. Then, the logical part of the brain, the prefrontal cortex, starts scrambling, working overtime trying to figure out what you're thinking. This creates this intense mental pressure. And what's the easiest way for them to relieve that pressure? Well, it's to start talking, often revealing way more than they intended, just to get a response from you and close that uncomfortable gap.
Okay, now we have to pump the brakes here and make a vital distinction. Everything we've talked about is about strategic, productive silence. But there is a dark side, a punitive use of silence that is incredibly harmful.
On one hand, you've got strategic silence. Its goal is to create space, to understand, to influence. On the other hand, you have the silent treatment, and its goal is totally different. It's to punish. Research has actually shown that getting the silent treatment activates the same parts of your brain as physical pain. It's not a tactic. It's a form of social warfare designed to control and to hurt, and it will always destroy trust.
And that's because it attacks our #1 most fundamental human need, the need to belong. Using silence to shut someone out is a weapon that threatens our very sense of self-worth. One is the tool of a master communicator, the other is just a sign of a deeply harmful, damaging pattern.
So, as we wrap this up, it's worth asking yourself this question. We live in a world that is just overflowing with engineered noise, where everyone is screaming to be heard. But maybe the real power isn't in just adding to the chaos. Maybe it's in mastering that void. Is your silence an absence, or is it a presence? Is it a weapon for punishment, or a tool for understanding? In this world of constant noise, what is your silence really saying?